A very warm good evening to you. Our very next guest is social activist, president of the Barbados Labour Party's League of Young Socialists, and professional volunteer to some degree, Miss Roshanna Trim. Roshanna, welcome to One on One.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ron. Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. One woman, but many titles.
Yes.
First of all, I know we would have been talking about the power of volunteerism. Can you speak to that and why young people should find themselves in service, giving back to their country?
Absolutely. Barbados offers a lot to us as young people for our social development. And volunteerism offers us the opportunity to not only contribute to the well-being, the social well-being, economic, political well-being of the country, but also to aid in our own personal development. It offers a lot of young people, particularly those who may not typically or traditionally have access, who may not have the resources automatically based on social class or environment, the opportunity to learn skills and to enter spaces that they may not have had access to otherwise. But also to simply take in as much as you can so that as you navigate life, you have these experiences to fall back on.
How has volunteerism transformed your life?
So volunteerism has been a major part of my development. It's been a major part of any success that I've had. I started volunteering at around 15. My sister, I feel like this story has been told so many times, but my sister took me to the Barbados Youth Development Council with her when she was volunteering. And eventually I went on to be floor member, and I also went on to United Youth Leaders of Barbados. From there, they nominated me to go to the Barbados National Youth Parliament, and I was Prime Minister for 3 years. Following my departure from the Youth Parliament, I went back to the Barbados Youth Development Council. And so what has volunteerism offered me? It's offered me the opportunity to explore fields that I probably might not have done without being a volunteer. It's also given me opportunity to see different countries, make friends, build a network, but ultimately to be able to contribute to the well-being of Barbados, to assist in areas that sometimes young people are excluded from. And it is very important for us to be present, but also for us to not only speak as ourselves and for ourselves, but also for other persons who, like I said before, might traditionally not be included in conversations.
So you're a former Prime Minister.
Yes. Yes, I am.
You're also the founder of the Leadership Institute. Tell us about that program and the latest update on leadership.
Absolutely. So we founded Leadership in 2022, myself, and I have a team of 6 other women. And our focus is promoting leadership in young women across the region, not only in Barbados, but also we've worked in Belize, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, and we're hoping to add another country in the coming year. And what we want to do is to provide women with the tools to enter leadership spaces and to navigate it. We know that statistically across the world and in Barbados as well, women are still underrepresented in leadership. We still have societal norms or ideas or beliefs that pervade practices that may hinder or discourage women from entering leadership. And what we want to do is to be able to break down those barriers and provide women with the tools so that they personally can go after anything that they want to do.
What are the long-term goals for achieving gender equality in the workplace, and how do you think we should be working toward this as a society?
So ultimately, you want to create workplaces of society that allows for women, allows for anyone, as a matter of fact, to enter the workplace, be able to work comfortably, have access to decent work, have access to a safe working environment, and to feel comfortable while going about their day and ultimately trying to thrive and do the best for their family. The way that we can accomplish this is that we have to be willing to appreciate that different genders have different requirements or different things that they need to do for their family. We know in Barbados that predominantly women are the head of single parent households, and so that means that women carry the childbearing responsibility. We also know that that exists even in households that are not headed by women or in households where a father or a male presence exists. And so it means that there are responsibilities that women have that we have to consider. For example, collecting children from school. Schools end between 2 o'clock to 3:30, but most workplaces are from about 8:30, 9 o'clock until 4:35. which means that there has to be a provision, or there should be provisions, for women to not only collect their children in cases where they may not have anybody to do that, but then if we're asking them to continue working, what are the child care facilities that are accessible to them and easily accessible? If we know typically that a commute from to or from school for someone may last about an hour, then that's an hour that they're not being productive. And then they have to consider who is taking care of their child while they're at work. And so our child care facilities located nearby, are we also accounting for the fact that even if you are working from home, children require attention? And so how are we ensuring that women do not feel as though children prohibit them from advancing in the workplace? There are also studies that show that there are some considerations in terms of promotions, women's availability to do things like travel, to work late, to commit fully to a company. And so those concerns in no way are based on your qualifications, your capacity to contribute or to succeed, but more so on the idea that women are predominantly going to be taken up with family life and caring for others. And so how do we address that? We have to first start to unravel, one, why the women primarily take childcare in a society where we have fathers. And then the other thing to do is to create policies that recognize that we need to go a step further in providing things like mentorship for women in non-traditional fields, providing opportunities for them to learn skills that may not typically be the ones that women have great command over, but also just changing the mindset that childcare, family life, and those things, and the focus on it somehow limits women's capacity to contribute wholesomely.
Do you truly believe that women can have it all? Being the head of households across Barbados, do you think women can successfully juggle career and family life as well? I mean, it has been proven time and time again, but what, for you personally, how do you see that?
I think that you can. I think that it is possible. I think it depends on several things. It depends on the kind of community and support system that you have. It depends on even the workplace or the organization that you are employed at. It also depends on the individual and their ability to be able to juggle. But it is difficult for me to fathom that if men can have it all, if they can have the family, and they can also have the work, and they can excel, the thought that simply because I am a woman, that somehow limits me because I want to have children or I want to have a family. There should be no limitations. So if I want it, I should be able to get it. And in order for that to happen, you have to remove societal boundaries and assist with the unlearning of mindsets and building new mindsets, new practices, new cultures that allow for women to thrive regardless of them having children or regardless of them having a family.
You just made mention of mentorship moments ago. How can we as a society use mentorship as leverage for women to advance in their careers?
We have many examples, as you said, of women who have been exceptionally successful. We have CEOs, we have CFOs, we have COOs. And so the question might come, if that is the case, then why are there still barriers? And there are barriers because of socialization. For example, women are less likely to apply for positions that they are 75% qualified for than men are to apply for qualifications that they are less qualified for. And that has to do with socialization. And so if we have women who have gone through the corporate space, gone through other fields or other sectors, and who have succeeded, who share advice, who share how to navigate, who share how to address things like imposter syndrome, who are providing avenues for women to enter spaces that might be traditionally difficult for them to enter. Because there still are professions that we see that are male dominated. There are professions that we see that are female dominated, but that isn't because you can't enter. It is because somehow we have been told that there are certain professions that are more suitable for women or more suitable for men. And so in order for us to be able to address this, in order for us to have persons entering careers that aren't linked to gender or what we assume gender capacity or capability to be, it requires us to share information, pass on information. And there's a lot of power in somebody taking the time to sit with you and talk to you about what you want to do, what is the best strategy to get there. And we take for granted that young people, young women, that we know how to get where we want to go. And a lot of times all we have is a destination. Everything else we figure out as we go. And if there can be someone who could help you figure this out, who could guide you along the way, who could help you not to make some of the mistakes that they made when they were going after the path that you want to take, then that goes a long way.
You're also a mentor yourself within the Leadership Institute. What are some of the challenges that some of your mentees face most of the time?
Confidence.
Confidence.
And I mean, these are young women who have great ideas. These are smart young women. Some may come from challenging environments. And so one of the things that you find is that confidence is a big deal for young women. Believing in yourself, the ability to say no and to accept that no is a complete answer, being able to set boundaries and not feeling as though you have to be nice. And I want to make a qualification between nice and kind. Nice people tend not to have boundaries. They tend to be people pleasers. And so a lot of it isn't necessarily because I want to, but because I feel compelled to, because I'm not confident enough to say no or to stand up for myself. Kind people are those who are empathetic, compassionate, and you can be nice and have those things, but there's a thin line between offering persons grace and space and empathy and allowing for yourself to be taken advantage of. And I feel, and I've experienced it, that persons typically expect you to be nice. And so when you enter leadership as a woman, the things that persons might see as being passionate or being focused or committed in a male counterpart, they see sometimes as being emotional for you. They expect that decisions that you make may look different from your male counterparts. And even in instances where you make the same decisions that they would respect in men, they often might view it as harsh, dictatorial. They might see you as being difficult to work with because you take on a persona in leadership that shows that you are confident, that you are aware, and that you are focused. And that really has to do with how we view or how we expect women to react or how we expect them to engage with us on a daily basis.
Would you be able to speak to some of the enabling government policies that do exist that are helpful for youth entrepreneurship?
There are 3 particular programs, not specifically policies, that I think go a very long way in assisting youth entrepreneurs. One of those would be the Blockpreneurs program. It's a newer program, but it builds business centers in those spaces that we would consider to be blocks. And so persons, typically from disadvantaged neighborhoods, because we know that's where a lot of the blocks reside, they're able to pursue entrepreneurial ventures, car washes, salons, mini marts. And so it's nice to go through some of the communities where these centers have been built to be able to see young people pursuing different ventures, business ventures. The others would be YES, I think the Youth Entrepreneurship Scheme by the Ministry of Youth that has been running for an exceptionally long time, I don't know the number of years, also does a good job in encouraging and empowering young people to be entrepreneurs. And so there are several businesses run, owned, operated by young people who have gone through YES. And I think that young people should definitely reach out more in order to access those resources. And the next would be trust loans. And so we know that government currently offers loans of $5,000 interest-free to persons who are interested in pursuing entrepreneurial ventures. They give you free classes. You can get assistance with your business plan and all those different things. And if you need more capital once you have started your business and once you've repaid the loan, then you have access to an even larger amount. And so even in those programs, even in making sure that young people have access to capital, advice, mentors in some instances, in other programs, then it means that you are able to take a look at your business, access resources that allow for you to upskill, and for you to learn more and to be able to do more as an entrepreneur.
Should we be prioritizing big business more so than small scale entrepreneurship? I've been having a conversation recently and this person was saying, we are promoting vending, we are promoting small scale entrepreneurship, but maybe a bigger focus in terms of wealth creation and wealth generation should be a bigger focus for our government officials for the working class people?
I don't know that's one priority over the other. There are some persons who enjoy, for example, going to work every day. Some people enjoy having small businesses, opening their salon and being able to go, and it's manageable for them. And so that is one end of the spectrum, and it's a valuable end because small businesses help to feed communities and families. And then there are other persons who have their eyes set on large businesses scaling up their endeavors and being able to employ more persons. And we see that in some of the businesses across the island run by young people. And so we should absolutely be also promoting that. There should be no limitations on what you can achieve if you want it. So if I want to have a small business, then that's okay. And I should be able to access the resources to do that. And if at some point in time I want to have a larger business, or I want to scale up, or I want to start with a larger business because I have a specific idea, then the access and the resources to do so should also exist. And so our policies and ultimately the programs that we undertake have to keep both in mind.
You're doing some tremendous work within the Barbados Workers Union as their training and education coordinator. What are your thoughts on what can be done in terms of scaling back on the number of toxic work trends and working environments that we have been seeing across the landscape of the island?
So the Barbados Workers Union has prioritized workers' education for a very long time. And the reason for that is because we recognize that there's value in knowing your rights.
Yes.
There is value in understanding how to navigate the workplace. And persons take advantage of those who they perceive do not know. And so one of the things that is really important is to recognize that education does not end after secondary school. At the end of formal education, continuous education is important. And so the continuously educating persons about what their rights are, labor legislation, what is expected of employers, how do we foster positive work environments, how do we resolve conflict, because while there are some concerning work trends, and absolutely we continue to advocate and work tirelessly to address those, it is also important to be able to, for persons to also be able to manage relationships at work, interpersonal skills, and to continuously develop so that they're able to navigate workplaces, but also so that they know what the power is for unions as well as for workers, because there's a lot of power that workers have that they do not tap into simply because they do not recognize what their power is. And so we want to make sure that they're well aware of it.
How do you gauge the success of the ongoing training that you would have as teaching and education coordinator within the BWU?
So we get the feedback from the employers. We get the feedback from the persons who are attending. We get feedback from our IR officers. And so that is a big gauge of success for us. Our persons who are attending training, are they able to implement what they've learned, whether it be for shop stewards or conflict resolution, negotiations? Do the classes, do they feel as though they have further developed their skills, and can we continue to support them as they go through their work career?
How can organizations better support women in having a healthy work-life balance?
A lot of the policies that came in during COVID would have helped, things that we have sought to reverse. So one of those is flexi hours. Flexi hours, remote working, all of those different things assist women in being able to balance both work and their home life. It allows for them to be able to navigate demands of being possibly a single parent, while also earning a living and being able to fully contribute to a work environment. Additionally, things like childcare facilities at large companies would also help, because once again, in instances, for example, where there's summer vacation and children are home, if I'm not able to get my child into a camp, or it's difficult for someone to be able to collect them or take care of them, that also allows for me to be able to focus on work and also know that my child is safe and protected. And we saw some of those concerns coming out during COVID, where children were home, but persons were still expected to go to work. But also being understanding that even in flexi hours and remote work, there are demands that persons who are parents who are taking care of children have, that may also cause them, for example, to have a child crying or speaking in the background of a meeting. One of the things that I struggle with is when I'm on a meeting and somebody apologizes because they have to take care of their child. What would I expect you to do with a minor or a child that you have to take care of during a meeting, other than, well, you still have to take care of them, particularly if it's a toddler or a young child. The other thing is, I think we could also be more understanding that things pop up and things occur, and that it is important to allow some flexibility for that. And that's not to say that you're not asking persons to give the same amount of work or to contribute in the same way that you would expect others to, but it is to say that you may find different strategies or different paths, I should say, in order to, or systems, in order to allow for persons to be able to balance both effectively and efficiently. Because while we are running companies, it is also important to understand that there's still human beings that are working at our organizations. And sometimes the daily demands of life, having a sick child, a child with a disability, a child that may require additional attention, a young child, all of those different things factor into my ability to focus and my ability to contribute to a work environment.
At the end of the day, the business of business is people, and sometimes we may tend to forget that.
Absolutely. And so if we consider and we offer empathy and compassion in many instances, then we would find that we would not only have work environments that are more conducive to being productive and efficient, but also that persons are showing up at the workplace excited to be there and excited to contribute. Happy employees is a financial decision. It is a financial decision that will positively impact business.
How can we continue to promote work environments that focus on diversity, inclusivity, and equity as well?
We have to be intentional about providing persons with the education and the knowledge which allows for them to understand or to unlearn some of the things that we accept as being standard or as being true. We have to be able to interrogate some of the perspectives that we have on persons who may not conform to what we see as being normal or natural or any of those things. A lot of stigma and discrimination comes from a lack of education, lack of knowledge, the aversion to persons who are different to us, who have different beliefs and different cultures. And we also recognize that some of the things that we have held as being absolute or true over decades are not necessarily the same as we get new information. And so if we are going to cultivate a country where everybody is able to contribute, where everybody can give 100%, it means that we have to be intentional as well about the kind of policies that we implement and not wait to negotiate on human rights or personal freedoms, particularly for communities or persons who are not posing harm or any danger to the society at large.
What would you say are the primary barriers that are preventing women from entering leadership spaces generally based on your work? I know earlier you would have mentioned confidence in terms of what women are lacking in terms of the mentees that you have, but what do you think are those barriers that are preventing women generally from entering leadership spaces?
A major barrier to women entering leadership spaces is societal constraints in some instances. And the other times it is the amount of work that you have to do simply to convince persons that you belong in the space that you are in. Persons will use so many things to undermine or diminish the kind of work that you are doing. And it is exceptionally difficult. It is also even more difficult when you have family, when you have children to consider, when you have responsibilities. And so there are women who will opt not to engage in certain spaces, turn down positions because they feel as though the responsibilities that they have and the expectations aren't things that are accommodated or paid attention to in these spaces or by organizations. And so it means that sometimes people will ask you questions like, can you have it all? Or if they realize that you're taking a certain trajectory, they'll say, well, you definitely don't want children. And so just in those things, because you feel consistently like you have to choose which one you want, you find that women may opt not to enter these spaces.
How can public-private partnerships be leveraged to create more opportunities for our youth?
So there are a couple of ways. I feel like I've been waiting for this question for a while. Because the truth is that a lot of youth organizations, a lot of young people need access to opportunities. And a lot of the programs that are created for young people to access opportunities require funding. And so it is difficult for organizations that focus on young people and providing opportunities for young people to access those. There's always a need for opportunities, but there are not always enough opportunities. And so, or resources to create those opportunities. And so replication is a problem. Instead of a private company replicating what is being done by a youth organization or another organization, why not utilize those resources to expand the scope of the program? Paid internships for young people to gain skills, but that doesn't require them to sometimes ask parents that are already burdened financially to make contributions. Additionally, just inviting young people to networking opportunities, providing educational opportunities, workshops, training, supporting ministries, supporting, like I keep saying, youth organizations in being able to provide these services. The opportunities exist. We need to be able to sometimes amplify them, and we also need to be able to offer more to young people, and not just the young people that we deem as being well-adjusted, or young people who have graduated with CXCs and degrees, but also young people who come from marginalized communities or disadvantaged communities, young people who may be a bit rough around the edges, that take a little more work to get them to do certain things. Because we also have to recognize that your ability to dream outside the box, to consider avenues, and to believe in your capacity and to have confidence comes from investing in you even before you've actually reached the stage where you might be ready for the investment.
We've come to the end of our first half, Roshanna. It was a pleasure chatting with you about all of these opportunities and the vision that you have for a more equitable Barbados. At this time, we must take a short commercial break, but we'll be right back with more One-on-One.
Keep it clean, keep it green.
Barbadians, we invite you to get involved and play your part as we clean and green Barbados. Come into your community with media launches, bulk waste collection exercises, community engagement sessions, and giveaways. Get on board. Let's keep Barbados clean and green.
Beautiful, beautiful Barbados.
Welcome back to this very special One-on-One. We're sharing our time with President of the League of Young Socialists and social activists, youth activists, professional volunteer, Miss Roshanna Trim. Roshanna, I want to focus on how organizations can leverage training and educational opportunities for their employees in terms of entering the job market.
Research, recognizing that continuous upskilling is important. We know now that there is a focus or a push towards shorter certifications, which allow for persons to do a short course and be able to apply the knowledge in the workplace. And so utilizing platforms like the National Training Initiative, particularly in Barbados, the courses are free. The Barbados Workers Union, we offer courses free of cost to members as well as to the general public. There are some courses that there is a cost attached to, but we share that and it's quite affordable. And so it allows for you to access updated information, relevant information, for you to understand how the world of work is changing, how a particular field may be changing, what are best practices that now exist globally, so that we aren't left behind. The world is undoubtedly radically different now than what it was in 2014. And of course, in 2019 as well. And so if the world keeps advancing, yet we are not learning how to advance with it, or what those advancements are, or how they impact us, then we will ultimately be left behind.
We've made tremendous change since the COVID-19 pandemic regarding flexi hours and remote work. Should we prioritize some of the technologies more for female employees in particular as we go forward? It seems as if we've taken a step back, forgetting the lessons since COVID.
There is a massive benefit in general to flexi hours for everyone. I believe that women may benefit even more from it, as I stated before, particularly because of their child rearing responsibilities. And so employers utilizing flexi hours in order to ensure that their workforce is the most effective and efficient has a benefit to us. The idea that being at a desk is a measure or an efficient measure of productivity and of the kind of work that is being done, we know that not necessarily be true. And if we can acknowledge that it isn't necessarily true, then how do we maximize the time that we have with our employees or that we have asked persons to commit to employment? And so if you have 40 hours, how best do you utilize that and flexi hours using the times that may be best for you? There's some persons who work exceptionally well at 7 o'clock in the afternoon. But there are those of us who wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and we are ready to go. And so how do I make sure that the objectives, the requirements of my company, if that is possible, can be achieved by using the best of my employees?
Roshanna, how do you view the current state of crime in the island, and what do you think it would take to address it effectively where our youth are concerned, our young men and our young women as well?
The current spike in crime is concerning. We've seen a lot of shootings occurring in broad daylight, innocent persons, particularly there was a young 12-year-old girl that was injured and hospitalized as a result. And so it is important that we find ways to address crime. But crime is a multidimensional issue. It crosses many different sectors, areas, other issues and challenges that we have to confront as a society. And also, one of the challenges with crime is that crime prevention in the now is done by the police. Crime prevention for the future has to be done by organizations and other stakeholders in the community. And so, one, I think that it is important for us to support programs that address things like parenting and antisocial behavior, the kind of programs that are being run and supported by the National Peace Program. And those are programs that we're going to have to wait to see the impact of, because as we teach parents now parenting methods to assist with dealing with antisocial behavior, we won't see the results of that immediately. In the same way that if we are going into schools to deal with conflict resolution and interpersonal skills, we won't see the results of that until a little later. On the other hand, if we're seeking to right now address the spike, it also requires a whole country approach. And so if we're going to offer that approach, it means that if you see something, you have to say something.
Right.
It means that we must cultivate a relationship with the police that is not adversarial. It means that we have to be able to trust that the Barbados Police Service will protect and serve as they have committed to do. And that is one of the things that we definitely need to address, a distrust for police. We also have to address the relationship that some communities have with police officers and the approaches that are taken to engaging with citizens, as well as making sure that persons, regardless of who you are, that you are seeking to contribute to assisting with guiding young people in the correct manner.
Yeah.
And so it means that when we have mentorship programs and we ask for mentors, that persons come out. When we ask for persons to assist with young people who may require apprenticeship or who may require internships, that we also are willing to offer of our time, expertise and resources in order to support that. It is not enough to say that this is something that the government has to do. The government cannot address crime holistically. And very few things in Barbados can be addressed by one person or one entity. And so if we are going to deal with crime in a real way, it requires that we do it as a society, as a country, as one Barbados, and not necessarily simply looking to see who is going to be the person that is going to address it. And I think that one of the things that we have not factored in is the impact of COVID on young people. And we won't truly know the impact or fully understand the impact, I believe, until a few years down from here. But a lot of young people spent their teenage years, 2 or 3 out of their teenage years, in isolation, in quarantine. And so the socialization or the socializing or the kind of influences that they would have had access to were limited. And in that instance, we have to consider the impact of being at home, of not being able, for example, to join community clubs, of not being able to sometimes leave home environments that may not be the best, and having to stay in those spaces with persons that may not have supported their mental well-being as well as their physical or educational well-being. And in considering that, we then have to craft strategies that respond to it in a real way and not necessarily just because we believe that this is the only way to do it.
Do you feel as if the youth need to capitalize on digital technologies more where entrepreneurship is concerned?
We do. We do need to make better use of technology because we can't only be consumers of technology. And we've talked a lot about coding and robotics, but we consume technology a lot. We don't utilize technology in the way that we should. We don't utilize platforms in the ways that some of our counterparts in other regions are utilizing it. And there are some barriers here in Barbados to being able to capitalize on the opportunities that technology offers. I am hopeful that the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology, as they continue to roll out some of their programs and their initiatives, and as they continue to work on the technological infrastructure in Barbados, that we're going to be able to see, in association with the Ministry of Business, that we're going to be able to see some of that technology being highlighted and being promoted for business owners.
In reviewing the issue of crime and the state of crime in the island, do you feel as if the inadequate education and inadequate vocational training leads to some of these issues that we've been seeing?
So the challenge for me is that I don't necessarily think that we have inadequate vocational opportunities. Samuel Jackman Prescott Institute, the programs that are run in communities, the Construction Gateway program, the programs offered by Ministry of Youth, offered by Ministry of Labor, offered by other ministries or other organizations. Those programs exist. One of the major challenges, I believe, is one, that we have created a society that says that vocations are not as important or not as affluent as other careers, as traditional careers. And we're working to address that here in Barbados. I see it a lot, and it's something that I definitely support. But we could do a lot more in order, because I don't think that you have to choose either or. You don't have to choose whether you are interested in academics or you want to get into a vocational area. And so we have to be willing to recognize that they are equal, that there is space for all of them, and present it as such to young people. It is also important that we make sure that these programs are not just reaching the choir. And the choir would be the persons who pay attention to the things that comes from the ministry, who have parents or who go to institutions that they find this information easily accessible. And we have to be able to meet young people where they are, but we also have to be able to deliver programs that don't take exceptionally long, because persons are trying to assist their family or take care of their families. And so having to take time out to attend a program which may not yield a good return on investment almost immediately is going to be a challenge. When you look at something like the Barbados Youth Advanced Corps, you see the payment of stipends to young people so that they can participate. And that goes a long way, because it means that you're not necessarily sacrificing earning an income or being able to manage your expenses in order to upskill. And I think that's the important part.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we need to build more capacity in terms of access to quality education and vocational and technological training where youth are concerned?
There's always room to build capacity, and there's always room to expand. The demand for these courses, the demand for classes will always probably exceed the number that we are providing in any given moment. And so the opportunities to continuously increase the number of persons that we can reach and impact remains, it has to remain a priority for us.
How does economic inequality and lack of opportunities contribute to the youth crime situation, in your opinion?
Frustration. And so persons seek belonging in spaces where they will not be judged, where they do not feel less than. And gangs, which we know that we are having a challenge with, and other illegitimate sources of influence or negative sources of influence are able to thrive in those environments. And so if persons are living in poverty, if they do not have access to the resources that they need, the basic necessities, if they believe that there is no avenue for them to legitimately take care of their needs, then they are going to seek other means. And so we see that in crime. The challenge for us, however, is that I also believe that youth unemployment is also sometimes used as a scapegoat. And I say that because in some instances, there are opportunities for persons to access the resources. It's not that we're not going on to blocks. It's not that we are not reaching out. But sometimes it is that persons don't necessarily have all the interpersonal skills to navigate the world of work, to navigate other parts of society. And so they end up in a life of crime. And so we have to be able to provide examples of how honest work and contributing positively to society redounds to success. Because what we see is this culture, not only from in Barbados, but outside of Barbados, North America, and other places that we watch, like promotion videos and their music videos, where gang life seems to be lucrative. And so we have to be able to combat that with the reality of what occurs when you are in a gang, but also the challenges that you face in seeking to change your life, or what happens when the life finally catches up with you.
How can we use mentorship and after-school activities giving back to communities help in terms of youth being actively involved and not seeking out crime as a last resort or first resort?
So once again, being able to give examples of how being positive and how contributing in a positive manner to society leads to success. How does volunteering, for example, assist you in being able to access jobs that you may feel like you are not able to access based on your environment? We also have to be able to reach young people where they are, reach children where they are, to combat some of the negative influences that may exist in communities. And so after school programs and mentorships give young people the opportunity to engage with persons or even skills that they may not have access to in their everyday life. And so it allows for them to dream outside of the box, to think outside of the box, to recognize that there are possibilities, particularly when it's coming from persons who come from environments like yours, when they look like you, when they have some of the same experiences like you. So I think about when I go back into the communities that I grew up in, and we speak to young people or young girls, or just engage with young people while canvassing and those different things. It's very enlightening to listen to some of the challenges that they have that I may have had, but also to share, how do you address this? How do you confront this? How do you overcome this? How do you deal with some of the things that you may face? And how do you ultimately go about being able to make sure that you could thrive and survive in Barbados?
And while representation matters, why is it important for you to be that voice on speaking on matters where young Black girls and young Black boys are concerned?
So representation, like you said, it matters. And I don't know that it's important for me to speak, but it is important for young people to speak. And one of the things that struck me when I was younger, and one of the reasons that I've been involved in all the organizations and I do a lot of the work that I do, is because when I was growing up, coming from Bayland and Britons Hill, and my sister had a big impact on me, like I mentioned before, in terms of recognizing that there were additional opportunities. My mother did as well. There were other persons who also invested their time and resources in me. But one of the things that I thought about as I was leaving to go to meetings and going to youth parliament was that a lot of persons in my community didn't have these opportunities. And I looked around and realized that there weren't a lot of people who came from the community that I came from or that I knew of who came back and who gave back to the community, who was still talking to the young people in the community, children in the community, because a lot of times we end up moving out of these communities because we've done better for ourselves. We can afford to live in nicer neighborhoods. Maybe we may not want to remain in the same neighborhood. People advance and people change, and people want to maybe change their environments. And so one of the reasons that I committed to being able to speak wherever I can and whenever I can is because I know the importance of looking around and feeling like, yes, if you can do it, then I can do it too. If someone from a poor working class environment can speak on television and can represent and can show up and give back, and this is how far I can go, there are no limitations. So I have focused on continuously giving back for two reasons. The first is that I believe that young people should see persons who look like them, persons who let them know that there are no limits to what you can do if you put your mind to it, if you are supported, if you have community. So it's not enough for me to just speak on the matters. I also have to be able and willing to provide opportunities to build community for young people. And the other is this: so many people help me on my journey. So many people still help me. Those who send messages, those who call, those who, when we have a drive running, they call, they say, hey, we have this donation. Can we give it to you? Those who check in to make sure that, for example, my mental health is okay, or that I am physically well, and those kind of things. People just offering support and being a community. And I feel like if I don't pay that forward, if I am not also doing that to another generation or for another generation, or showing up how they need me to, then ultimately I am doing a disservice to those persons who have invested in me.
Do you feel then as if there's equal scope for any young, intelligent, well-expressed black boy or black girl from a marginalized community to therefore climb the ranks of success where Barbados is concerned?
I think that to say yes, absolutely, would be disingenuous. There are limitations, there are boundaries, there are challenges for young people who are seeking to advance, who come from certain communities. And we would love to say that those challenges do not still exist, but we know that they do. And that may simply be because of the resources or the environment that you come from. Privilege is not only wrapped up in the amount of money that you have, or if your family is upper class or lower class. It also has to do with the environment that you are in, the things that you are exposed to, what you are being told. If you are coming from a household that says you could do anything that you want to, as opposed to one who is not interested in what you want to do, or which does not see value in what you are doing. And so it is not equal. But while there's equal opportunity too, I don't believe that there's equal access to. And that is not necessarily because it is too expensive, but more so because of other external factors. And so it becomes incumbent on persons who are working in NGOs, persons who have done well for themselves, persons who are able and who have the resources to give back, to stand in the breach and to provide these opportunities to young people so that they would have the opportunity to be able to thrive. And I keep saying thrive because I don't think it's enough to just be able to navigate life. You have to be able to feel a level of passion, as well as to feel a level of confidence and excitement, and feel invigorated about what you are doing. And that's what thriving is, beyond just living or navigating a space.
How are you seeking to challenge any harmful stereotypes or misconceptions that may exist where young black women are concerned?
So I lead. I enter leadership spaces. One of the things that I've been convincing myself recently is to just apply, because the hardest thing or the most difficult thing you can hear is no. I show up in leadership spaces as myself. I show up unapologetically. I show up hoping to lead with empathy and compassion, and to not forget the things that have grounded me: family, community, friends, the values that I was taught. And so in doing so, it is my hope that persons see an example, but also that the initiatives that we undertake in these organizations or during my tenure, that these are impactful, and also that it makes sure that it recognizes the difficulties that young women or just other marginalized communities may have in terms of having access and to respond to those through these initiatives.
I know it's also very, very important to you. You've mentioned family and community, but for young people to not only take up space, but actively being involved in community, being involved in different organizations. Speak to that specifically and any advice you may have for young persons watching the program at this time.
It is very easy. It can be very easy with everything that is going on to withdraw. And to focus on the things that are essential, to not want to engage with things that aren't necessary. I know that a lot of young people often feel overstimulated, overwhelmed, struggle with things like anxiety. And so it is important for us to, one, be able to navigate that, but also for us to contribute to others. A couple of years ago, I went to Rwanda, and one of the things that I learned while there, I got a book called Ubuntu. And Ubuntu, simply translated in its most basic sense, acknowledges the principle that I am because you are. And I am because you are means that if the society is not good, then how do I enjoy a great life? How do I feel comfortable being successful if the society and everyone is not being carried along? And we are measured by how we treat the most vulnerable in our society. And so it is not enough to leave anybody behind. And so if we recognize the importance of society, and if we want to see society develop, it is not enough to sit back and fold our hands and expect that everybody else will provide the resources or the manpower for society to develop, but we have to contribute. We have to pay forward some of the things that are given to us, the blessings, some of the benefits that we might receive from the spaces that we are in. And so if I live comfortably, but the person next to me is starving, and I am concerned about crime, then it means that if I recognize that poverty is one of the reasons that crime exists, then I want to address that. Because I cannot live the best life that I can live if you are ultimately suffering. And so for me, that is the best way to talk about giving back. And so my advice would be to find your passion. What are you passionate about? If you are passionate about climate change, there are several organizations that you can get involved in. If you are passionate about gender, Leadership Institute is right here, but there are also other organizations that you can get involved in. If you are interested in things like just giving back, you have JCI, you have Rotaract, and the list goes on and on in terms of the organizations that are there that you can give back to. And it doesn't mean that you have to give 8 hours a week. You might only be able to volunteer 1 hour a week to read a book to students at a reading program. That is sufficient. And so volunteerism counts because it helps society to thrive. It helps us to be able to allocate resources to communities that may not have them. It helps us to use resources, limited resources, scarce resources efficiently and effectively to reach the most amount of persons, because ultimately volunteers do the work that persons will charge $1,000 for a dollar, for nothing. And the reason for that is because you recognize that there is value in work, but there is even more value in making sure that the person next to you, the person from the other community, someone who is marginalized or disadvantaged, that they're also able to achieve a quality of life that you have as well.
Inspiring, Roshanna. We've come to the end of One-on-One, but I want to thank you profusely for your time and spending it here with us at the Public Affairs Department of Barbados.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. We've come to the end of this very special one-on-one with youth advocate, social activist as well, Miss Roshanna Trim. On behalf of my producer and I'm Miss Ron Robinson. Until next time.